Good day, and welcome to the Lillyroddyshow, coming to you from the LRS studios here in Houston, Texas. As always, so wonderful to have you with me this week as we look at what's going on for August 2nd through August 8th of 2015. With all the planets moving through Leo, it continues to be a very hot time here in Houston. We've been right at 99 and 100 degrees every day. And with Venus retrograding in Leo, our hot times might continue well into October, especially here in Houston. I would like to remind you that on Saturday, August the 15th, the Houston Astrological Society will present a one-day conference on Pluto. The event starts at 9 p.m. and will run until 4 p.m. There are 4 speakers, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, with a lunch break in between. The cost of the event is $25 for Houston Astrological Society members and $50 for non-members. The event will be held at the ARE Center or the Edgar Cayce Center. If you have any questions, you can contact me at Lillyroddyshow at AOL.com, my email address, or find me on Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest. And of course, my website, Lillyroddyshow.com. And it's not even Mercury retrograde. You can also ask me questions about astrology or inquire about individual readings if you would like. I hope to see you a lot out there at our Pluto conference on August the 15th. Now let's take a look at next week, August 2nd through August 8th of 2015. Now this whole next week is really a big Saturn week. Not only does Saturn goes direct on August 2nd, but Jupiter, Venus, Mars, and Mercury all make contact with Saturn this week. Also this week, Mercury moves into Virgo on the 7th, and Mars enters Leo on the 8th. Let's take a look at Saturn and how it's affecting us for this week. First, Saturn goes direct early Sunday morning on August 2nd. Saturn had retrograded back into Scorpio and was pulling us back into looking at our economic conditions, the fears that we've been dealing with people not necessarily very comfortably, and with ourselves, and wanting to sort of sweep things under the rug. And Saturn into Scorpio has not allowed us to do that. When Saturn was initially direct in the early part of this year, from January through May, we were making a lot of headway as Saturn was moving through Sagittarius. After Saturn went retrograde at the end of May, we seemed to take our struggle internally, and it didn't look like we were making much headway, if any, in the outside world. Now, with Saturn going direct, we'll find ourselves back on our paths. Also, this is part of the bigger picture of Saturn. Saturn has been squaring Neptune in the sky. Now, this all started last year. And this has been the cause of the drop in gasoline prices. The energy of this Saturn-Neptune square finally peaks out about the end of November, but it still may be a while before the prices get back up, and that may be January or February of 2016. It may even be longer before we actually get back up to a price for gasoline, something per barrel, gasoline per barrel, something that would have been comparable. Maybe we'll get up to $75 a barrel. Maybe that'll be about the middle of the year. We'll just have to see. And as Saturn goes direct, she'll have the most impact on those of you that are mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. Currently, most of you have been under the influence of Neptune. These are the mutable signs. Most of you have been under the influence of Neptune, and Neptune has been this sort of spiritual retreat, kind of hiding out kind of energy, and you've been finding it difficult to feel motivated, clear about any decision, or exactly sure about what you should be doing. Hopefully, as Saturn goes direct, this will add more clarity for you and once again put you back on track to getting your own life organized and putting your career back on track as well. Now, this all will start about August the 2nd. It'll take Saturn a couple of weeks to for us to feel her impact very strongly, but around the middle of the month, we will feel the impact of Saturn, and that will continue to build as we get well into next year. We're going to do lots of Saturn in Sagittarius next year. Now, one of the transits we are having is the square between Jupiter and Saturn. Typically, this is not a great transit, as it usually indicates difficulties with economic times, limited growth, or situations where we essentially have to learn to do with less. This aspect has been in effect, this Jupiter square Saturn has been in effect since the middle of July and will continue to be in effect through the end of August. This should also tend to keep the stock market lower, as Saturn tends to excite people's fears about loss. Jupiter and Saturn, the square, also have a lot to do with our border problems and immigration issues. It's important to remember that this is just not here in the United States, but there are major immigration problems all over our planet. Jupiter has to do with expansion and foreigners. Saturn has to do with boundaries and limitations. Saturn is moving into the sign of Sagittarius, which is the sign of immigrants. So that would heighten those issues and make us more conscious of where our boundaries are and possibly if they're working or not working. I'm sure most people would agree that they aren't working. The issues of immigration, police and justice reform, rebuilding of the roads and highways, reworking airline travel, and taking a hard look at the ideals of education will all come up this year with the USA chart as Saturn enters our first house in the USA chart. So Saturn's going to make us pay attention, and in my view, one of the things I always say about Saturn is that Saturn is the medicine. It's not that we don't know that we have a problem, but this is sort of the first time we actually go deal with it when Saturn comes in. As a result of that, then things sometimes look worse. In reality, they are no worse than they were the day before, but we're just really looking into them. So if you're a person with planets in mutable signs, Gemini, Pisces, Virgo, or Sagittarius, then you'll be feeling the impact of Saturn attitude of grow up and get a job. So Saturn wants us to move forward despite our conditions and just do the best we can. And that will begin to push those mutable signs sort of out of this indecisive period that really you've been in for the last couple of years. Also, on the 5th, we have Venus square Saturn. Now, this is a time where we can feel that we don't have enough, or that all of our efforts don't produce the results that we want. We can feel down emotionally, or feel that others have let us down. This would be especially true for those that are involved in relationships, and those that aren't working are very likely to come to an end during this Venus retrograde cycle. And with Venus squaring Saturn on August the 5th, that will just emphasize what's missing in relationships even more. Of course, for those relationships that are fine, this is more sort of a review and renew rather than a time for things to come to an end. And then on the 6th, we have Mercury square Saturn. Essentially, our communicator is being judged with the influence of Saturn. Easily, this can make us feel more pessimistic or overreact to any sort of comment or potential criticism, especially if it's negative. One of the things I can say about Saturn is that it's important to choose good judges and not just a critic. And because of Saturn's concern for our future and long-term security, she tends to overthink the potential negativity that could come from any choice that we make. Because of that, she moves slowly and cautiously to make sure that the gains she makes are held on to. The other side of that is Saturn can represent fear of that movement because we might not be successful. And then Saturn, the ruler of the metal lead, can make us feel like we have lead boots on and we're not getting anywhere. However, if you can use Saturn's overseer's energy to help guide us toward a path of success and not freeze us into non-action via her fear and negativity, we can be very productive with the energies of Saturn. She just expects us to be very real. Also this week, Mercury enters Virgo on the afternoon of the 7th. Mercury is very much at home in Virgo and will help us to be more detailed and clear about our thinking processes. This can also be a time where we'll all want to sort of get back into eating better and taking better care of ourselves physically, getting back into exercise programs, cleaning things up, organizing. Should be a really nice Mercury in Virgo time. And on Saturday, Mars, planet of action, moves into the sign of Leo on Saturday the 8th. With Mars in Leo, we should all pay a lot more attention to our own sense of self-care and self-esteem. Personally, I think it's going to be very interesting because Mars will be activating President Obama's chart. Of course, he's a Leo, as well as moving through the first house of Donald Trump's chart. Yes, Donald Trump is a Leo. He's a Cancer, but he's Leo rising. He's a Gemini. He's Leo rising, and he has Mars in the first house. And as I stated last week, Donald Trump has Mars in Leo in the first house. This is sort of where we would assume that his view of self-importance and narcissism comes from. And of course, Donald Trump will be experiencing a Mars return about the middle of September. That should be very interesting. What's a Mars return? A return is any planet that comes back to the place in the chart where it was when you were born. For example, a birthday is a solar return. However, Mars returns occur about every 2 years, and the first time this occurs for us as humans is called the terrible twos. So Mars tends to be reactive, defensive, could be angry, could be courageous. So I would expect both of these men to take a much more proactive course in everything they're doing over the next 40 days or so. It should be interesting to see how that plays out on the larger political stage. I want to thank you for joining me this week to look at August 2nd through August 8th, and I hope you'll join me next week as we look at August 9th through August 15th of 2015. This is the Lilly Roddy Show, coming to you from the LRS studios here in Houston, Texas, reminding you to keep those stars in your eyes. Bye-bye.